All right, here we are. Welcome, welcome, my dear.
I'm so excited to be here. I've really been looking forward to this.
I'm so happy to have you and have you in your Florida energy too.
Oh my goodness, when I got here, I was like, this is why Lacey shows up just so happy all the time. We're in that sunshine. It literally looks like Thailand here.
It
It's
does, right?
perfectly, oh my
Oh,
goodness,
that's so
so
good.
beautiful.
So Sandy's actually from or living in New York right now too, or not too. I know I said two, but she's in Florida right now, and living it up and enjoying it, and here to chat with us. So thank you for being here.
So excited to be here.
So, for everyone's context, Sandy is a friend and client, and she is someone who really just, I think, does a great job of like being, committed to her business and a high performer, but really operating from that feminine energy place. And so we kind of just wanted to have a conversation about that. I think that's something that I do a ton in my business, but I don't actually talk about. Like outwardly either. So I think it's gonna be interesting to kind of be able to like weave those two together as well. But first, let's just have you kind of tell everyone like who you are, what you about, all the amazing things about you, and then we'll kind of dive into that feminine energy conversation.
Yes, I feel like this conversation couldn't have come at a better time too, because I feel like
Yeah.
there's just so much going on right now. And if we can kind of anchor into this a little bit more, we're going to feel this sense of relief that we actually don't need to force and like make things harder on ourselves than it actually has to be.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy to connect with each and every one of you. I am Sandy. I am the founder of a podcast called Prosperous. And I also am the founder of a school called Prosperous School of Self-Realization. And I'm here with one of my amazing clients right now. We're doing a facilitated retreat. So she's just going to be outside doing some journaling and being nurtured by Mother Nature too. But my mission and my devotion is to show people that it's fully possible to have outer success and inner fulfillment, that it doesn't have to be one thing or the other, that you don't have to sacrifice your inner peace, your spiritual practice, or your self-care practice, or your intimate love life, or your relationships with your family to build a successful business. And if we can kind of meet at that intersection, then what we experience in life is harmony and things start flowing a little bit easier. And so as we're making massive transitions in the world right now, where we're literally watching all the big structures and just like corporations begin to crumble, we're watching the rising of the feminine energy and the rising of the way that we do life and business. So that's really like what I like to focus on.
So good. Hi, Jen. Jen said she loves that. So good. If you guys have questions, by the way, too, like just use them up. Like while she's here, ask her whatever you got. So if you have questions, drop them for us too. But I totally agree with that. And I think that, I feel like there's this interesting place where most people, well, I could be wrong, in my sphere, in my perspective, it seems like most people have kind of gotten away from the hustle mentality a little bit more. But I also feel like there isn't like this necessarily like super clear container that's replaced it. And I think this is almost what we're talking about here, which is like, well, what is the opposite of hustle? What does that actually look like to live into that? And I feel like that's almost where people get confused. Like they hear like, well, I'm not supposed to hustle. I'm not supposed to like burn myself out. But like, what does that look like instead? And so I think that this is like super helpful to be like, here's actually what it kind of looks like instead. But before we go into that, I really want to talk about how this isn't the opposite of like having goals and getting what you want.
So glad you said that.
Because I think that that's what I certainly know at a point in my life, I know you did too, where I really would have thought that. I would have been like, oh, these two on their Facebook Live are cute and shit, but like I have goals. Like I want to like get things done. So just kind of like tell us your thought process on how like this is actually like even maybe a faster path to the goal. It's not necessarily like in opposition to like having big desires.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy that you brought this up, because this is the part where we get stuck the most, where it's almost like, ugh, ugh. Like don't hustle, what? Ugh. Because it's uncomfortable, because in our minds, what happens is we think that we're afraid of releasing control. And we think that we're throwing the towel in and we're like, okay, I'll surrender to the flow. And really what I want everyone to know who is stuck in this place right now is that living or operating in your business from a feminine place doesn't mean that you're necessarily surrendering and then and letting go of your effort, right? Because one of the most beautiful things that my meditation teacher shared with me when I was studying with him is that your ascending human effort is always met with descending grace. So what that means is, as you operate in your business and you take the time to prioritize your energy, because your energy is your brilliance, your energy is where all your gifts live, and the way that you even show up to serve your clients, to make money, all of that is your energy.
Yeah.
And so when you spend the time to prioritize that, what ends up happening is this sense of guidance that you get. You know how sometimes things kind of happen very synchronistically. I think I made that word up, but things happen very synchronistically and you're like, whoa, like how did that happen?
Yes.
Like, you know how when you beat yourself up and you're just trying so hard to think about this problem, you're trying to solve it, and then you go for a fresh walk outside, and then suddenly like the idea or the problem, the solution comes to you.
Always.
That is what, yeah.
If that has happened to you, tell us, because I feel like that's like always what happens to me. Yeah. Like literally, I've like never solved a big problem in front of my fucking computer. Do you know what I mean? Like ever. I don't think. That.
Yes.
Right. Like if you have, tell me about that. I'm interested in that too, but I'm just curious if that's everyone else's experience, because that's so true for me.
100%. Yeah. So what happens is when you're operating more from a feminine place, all it means, to make it really simple, is that you're prioritizing your energy above all, because you understand that you are the manifestation. I think a lot of times we talk about manifesting things, but if you even look at the word manifest, like you are the manifestation, the human manifestation. And so when you are like, wow, I'm the gift, like I've got the power, like I have the brilliance, all the ideas are flowing through me for me to be birthed into the world, then what happens is you treat yourself like the thing that you're trying to call in, and then you spend more time prioritizing your energy, which is tapping into more of your feminine nature.
Yeah.
And then because of that, the guidance kind of unfolds along, just like when you get really hard and you get stuck in your own way and you go out for a walk in Mother Nature and you start feeling recharged. It's the same thing that you're doing when you tap into your feminine energy. You feel recharged.
Yes.
But the reason why so many people struggle with that is because for such a long time, we have been going through societal programming, generational programming, ancestral programming that tells us you need to work harder to be successful, and you can't have any inner peace while you do that.
Totally. It's almost like, and don't you dare worry about inner peace is almost part of it too, right?
Yeah, like that's an insult. Like, what do you
right. Everyone's agreeing. Yeah. Sherry says, like, when you take a break or go on vacation and come back ready to conquer everything in half the time, 100%. So like every one of my clients like makes more money when they go on vacation. Drew says, yes, it's always when I'm like off watching Netflix or taking a walk. Yep. Janelle says, definitely I've had that happen. Space seems to allow things in, for sure. I remember like 2 weeks ago, there was like this thing in my business that I really needed to decide on. And it just felt like it was like present with me all the time. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, I have to decide on that. I have to decide on that. And it started to feel so heavy. And then one night I just like sat outside of my patio for like, I don't know, not very long. Like it was like 45 minutes. And all of a sudden, like, it was just so clear to me. And I was like, shut the fuck up. Like, I've been worried about this for 2 weeks. I sat my little butt down outside for maybe 45 minutes and just solved it like with the easiest solution ever. So I think it's just so interesting how that works.
Yeah. And I think the way that we get there is to not be hard on ourselves, because the first thing that us women do is we just get so hard on ourselves and we lose that sense of self-love and that sense of self-compassion. And that is the highest principle of life is you have to have compassion towards yourself, but also other people as well. And you can't possibly have compassion towards other people if you're not treating yourself in that way. So as you're going through this transition and you're feeling more like you want to get into this nurturing feminine state, it's really about knowing that you're not going to get there overnight. Yes. And that it's going to be a practice, and that you have to be kind to yourself along the way, because your ego is going to come up and be like, what do you mean take a little break right now? Or what do you mean start work a little later? Like, I have so many clients that I need to meet. Oh my God, I got money to make. Oh my God, that goal that I have for this quarter, like I need to hit that, right? So your ego is going to come in and be like, yeah, but, right? And then it's really your job to watch your ego doing that, which is, your ego is a part of your mind, and to say, listen, ego, let's sit down and let's have a conversation. Here's our intention. We're not taking away your goals from you. We're actually going to accelerate it even more. And the way that we do that is by actually taking care of you and your nervous system and your thoughts and the way that you're showing up.
Oh, I have so much to say about that. It's so good, but I have to read what Belinda just said because it gave me goosebumps. Oh. She said, once my dad told me that inner peace was only for after he retired. Like, how crazy is that? And we are like literally like growing up, like hearing these things. And so the idea, like you just said, of like, take the morning off or whatever, or prioritize your peace, almost feels laughable, I think, to our ego, right? Mm.
Yes. Okay. So I just have to speak to Belinda for a second. So Belinda, I just wrote in my message, and this was just yesterday in my notes, and it says, you don't have to wait until you die to rest in peace.
Like, oh, goosebumps.
So many of us, like, we wait until we take our last breath to realize all the things that we want to do and all the ways that we want to show up and how we want to feel and who we want to spend our time with. But when I like sat in that a little bit, I was like, wait, you can work in your business and you can rest in peace. Like, you can be rested in peace while you're working on your business. And actually, because you're in a state of peace and because your mind feels a lot more balanced, anything that comes up to you at all, like any problem that comes up to you at all, because you have that peace, you can stand away from your own mind. You can see it more clearly in that stillness, and you can be like, okay, here's what we're going to do. And you're going to feel better because of it. So you don't need to wait until the end of your life to rest in peace. Like, you can rest in peace and still crush all your goals. Like, we got goals, right? And we can still accomplish all of that with having more peace in our heart.
I would say for me, like, I think this is like funny because it's almost a more masculine way to think about it, but I think it's what led me to bringing more feminine into my business, is that I'm just like about what works. Like, I only want to do shit that works. And I've done both, right? Where I've like burnt myself out and like, you know, pushed at the cost of a lot of other things. And then I've done the thing where like, I actually do take the time for mindset, or I actually do rest in the middle of the day when I'm having a hard day or whatever. That just fundamentally works way better for me. Like, right. So it's almost like that led me to being like, oh, well, this just consistently works a lot better. I should just do this more. And I've totally seen that in my own business. The more I prioritize my own peace, the more the results come. When I stop doing that, I have an unpeaceful business. And what is that? Like, it makes results harder to get. Like, it's like every time, you know what I mean?
All right, everyone, please do this. Write down in the comment section exactly what Lacey just said, because it's quotable. The more I prioritize my peace, the better results I get.
Whew. Every time, right?
Yeah.
And I think what you said earlier, which I want to tie that into, is really important, which is like, but you have to love yourself deeply to be able to do that. And that's something I really see with you as a client, is one of the reasons I want to have this conversation. Like, even like if you've like done something that like you would have done differently, or if you whatever, like you like love yourself so hard through it that it makes it easy for you to move through things. Like, you're like, oh, I see how I could have done that differently, but you know what? I did the best I could with what I have. Like, I love myself, moving on. And it's like, I feel like you move through levels really quickly because of that. But I feel like that's not a conversation that happens as it relates to fast growth. It's almost like, well, you love yourself over here and then you show up in business over here. And it's like, the reason you have fast growth is because you love yourself really hard, right?
Yes, I love that you bring that up, and you just have such a powerful gift of being able to kind of like step outside of it and just see it so clearly. So I just want to honor you for that. But yeah, I think sometimes the reason why we are so afraid to slow down, even though we really need it, like there's so many people, Lacey, that say that they really need what I'm offering in my program. They really need to have more peace, like they really need to have more sleep and all of that. But what keeps people stuck is thinking that, well, if I do this, then what else am I going to have to compromise? What am I going to have to lose if I prioritize this? And what I want everyone to know is that, you know, you can have so much outer success and even more when you spend the time prioritizing your energy. And it only makes sense. We all learned from, you know, 6th grade physics class that everything is energy. And when I think back about that class, like it was really boring and all the formulas really sucked. But, you know, E equals MC squared and everything is energy, like that's always stuck with me. And the reason why is because we know money is energy. And the way that we're having this conversation right now is energy. Like we're putting our energy out in order to receive it back in return. So if everything is energy, and if money is energy, and if relationships are energy, then wouldn't it make sense that we spend our time prioritizing our energy so we can have more of everything, because we're meant to live like a prosperous and really abundant life?
Yes,
right?
Totally. I think it's one of those things where it's just like, we're just not getting that permission enough to, right? Which I want to talk about more, but I want to read some of this. Sherry said, our higher self is always at peace. And when we get quiet, we get clarity faster than when we try to effort our way to the solution. Totally. Yes, Claire, I know you love this. So good. Thank you for being here. Belinda loved your message too, Sandy. Sherry said this is a good question. The hardest thing I find is when your work is very implementation driven and very like in the details, remembering to still bring that quiet, flowy approach even to the tactical pieces.
Yes. Yeah. So I'll get into this a little bit more in terms of like the flow, but in terms of grounding into your feminine energy, what I find is always helpful is starting off your morning and setting the tone before you get into the implementation and the execution and the strategy. If you can start off your morning and set the tone by waking up when the sun wakes up and following your circadian rhythm, right? Or going for a walk outside just to be grounded in Mother Nature. Like there is a reason why when we go outside, we say things like, oh my God, I feel so recharged, because the earth is a magnetic electric field and we are also bioelectrical beings. And so if we go out in Mother Earth, it's literally like taking your iPhone and putting it into the wall and charging it. It activates us and it gives us more energy. And so if you spend the day just slowing down, you don't even need to meditate for 30 minutes. You just need to like be still and focus on one thing for 1 minute and walk outside. That's going to help you to get into a super grounded feminine energy. And then now as you flow into your business, you're going to be in your masculine, because you're going to have a lot of focused attention, which is your masculine energy. You're going to have a lot more hustle. And the masculine energy is ruled by the sun. The feminine energy is ruled by the moon. And so the masculine energy, like it's burning, the fire's transforming, go, right? And that's cool. But what you want to remember is to remain, like to allow yourself to remain in that grounded state as you're doing that. So what I like to introduce to my private clients and that I do myself is breathing practices throughout the day after every little thing that you implement. So maybe you find that you're a sprinter, like maybe you don't like to work all day long, but you like to have focused times where you're getting a lot of work done more effectively and efficiently. Then within those times, pause after you like finish something before you get on to the next thing, and just take a few deep breaths. That's it. Like we can do it together right now. Just I'll invite everyone, just close your eyes for a moment and inhale through your nose. And then elongate your exhale through the mouth. Envision the inhales and exhales almost as if you're watching waves in the ocean. Inhale. And allow one wave to drift into the next. And you're going to exhale. One more time, inhale. And exhale. Elongate that to be longer than your inhale. And then allow your body to just receive whatever it is that it's feeling in this moment right now. Before you even try to put words to it, like just be present with that. And then you open your eyes. So how would your energy feel, and how would your whole day shift if you did that after every big task that you did? That's it. So simple, right? Like you would have so much more sustained energy throughout the day. You're not going to be like, oh my God, I have a client. Oh my God, I hope they cancel. Or you're not going to be like, I can't wait until the day is over. But then you're mean to your partner because you have no energy left to give him all that you've got because you're not sustaining it throughout the day. So it's just little simple, tiny things that you can do to really sustain that same energy as you're doing the implementation and the execution.
It's so funny because I think it's so true in almost every regard that the simple things are always the most results producing, and they're the things we always write off. Yes. Right? Like that, I'm like, oh, I'm like buzzy. That felt great. Like I'm into that. Right. But it's so easy to be like, whatever, what am I going to do? Sit and take 5 deep breaths. Who cares? But it always is those little things. And I think the same is true with mindset. Like it can be like, oh, what am I going to do? Affirm something to myself 5 times. Yes. And that will make a big difference. But it's like we don't actually take those times, and we think that it has to be so much bigger. And again, I think that's like cultural. I think that is the masculine, where it's like it has to be so hard and you have to do these huge tasks versus like it can be 5 minutes, it can be 3 deep breaths, it can be 5 affirmations. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And just to kind of get a feel on how everyone's feeling that did that, pop it in the comment section. Like, how did you feel after taking just a few deep breaths?
Oh yeah, Jasmine said she did an amazing session this morning with breath work, and she's keeping it part of her routine. So good. Belinda said the ocean wave visual is so great. Never thought about it like that. Sherry said, ooh, breath work between client tasks. I'm going to try this. So good. Okay, Sherry has a question. Do you have any end of workday practices to let go of the day or client responsibilities? That was so good. I feel good about my morning and nighttime practices, but do wrestle with making that transition from my workday to the other aspects of life in the evening.
Yes, that's such a great question. Super great. I think it took me some time to actually learn that because I've taught meditation to hundreds of people. And then I was a meditation teacher, but then I transitioned into having a business, and I really had to learn like how to wrestle between these two worlds and combine them to become one. And I really struggled with that. And I remember looking to find like, what is this person's schedule look like? What look like?
Like we have all done that. No one has not Googled someone else's schedule. Like everyone has done that.
Right? I'm like, oh my God, like how does this person keep it all together? Google, please tell me. So, we treat Google like guru and we get lost along the way. But so in terms of how I finally came to get really clear on this is, first, it starts with your environment, right? So I think what happens is, especially if you work from home, then you can take your work like all over the place, and that's great. That's cool. But I found for me, what I really love to do is be in the environment that is dedicated to my work, so that I know that when I enter that container, this is like when my CEO boss babe comes out, and this is when I'm like in a protected sanctuary to do whatever's got to be done. And it's a different energy. And I'm also, maybe you're wearing different clothes too. Like maybe you, when you're transitioning into your boss babe outfit, like you're actually dressing yourself up and you're feeling more in your feminine, and you're doing your hair and you're doing a little bit of your makeup, whatever, so that you can be in that work vibe. But to transition out of that, the moment that you walk out that room, like that's dedicated to your work, you have transitioned out, and now you're entering into another container. So I like to think of things like containers. I talk a lot about the concept of energetic containers and physical containers as well. So once you leave that physical container and you leave that energetic container, you're continuing into a different one. So maybe now you're transitioning to dinner and things like that. So what I call this is a transition, like a self-care transition. So what you would do is think about one thing that you can do that is your transition time. Like it's your self-care transition time. So it's maybe for you, it's taking a shower and you're cleansing the energy off from the day, and like all the things that your private clients shared with you and all of their stuff just completely just gets cleansed, which by the way, when you're in between, you're actually cleansing a lot of that as well. So you know, I never feel drained from my clients and I do really deep work. I always feel so much more energized even after I'm done with our session, because they've got tools that they're working through, but I've got tools and I'm using them. So by the end of the day, like I have time for my fiance and for my pup son, you know? So think about the one thing that you can do to transition. So it might be taking a shower and cleansing your body, changing out into your PJs, and telling yourself, like telling your mind, okay, you're in work mode now, you're transitioning roles, right? So we all have so many different roles that we play. And sometimes what happens is when you scatter that role everywhere you go and you see that as like your identity, then you're going to take that role and you're going to bring it into your kitchen and you're going to bring it into your house and you're going to bring it into your relationships, and that energy leaks in a bunch of other different places. So what I like to do is just be more specific with my mind and teach it. Okay, like when you're in this room, you're getting your work done, and then when you transition out in this room, you're not near your phone, like it's in a drawer somewhere, or you know, and you're being present with exactly where you're at. And then same thing when I'm going to bed, I will transition out of being on my phone. So sure, there will be some nights where I'm on my phone later than I would like to just like catch up with things. But as far as when I go in the bedroom, my phone will never go in my bedroom. I do not wake up touching it. I do not go to sleep scrolling through it. And the reason being is because it creates addictive patterns in the mind. And I know for me, before I go to sleep, I want to rest. And so something as simple as keeping your phone away when you're like transitioning out of work mode and doing whatever you got to do to wrap things up so that you can be present with where you're at is kind of the best way that you can do it. And then just figure out what works for you as you start experimenting with it.
So good. I love that. Everyone loved the wave. Jen says she loves this conversation. You're so welcome. Claire says I did a similar exercise with my audience this morning to overcome overwhelm. Simplest tools make the biggest difference. 100%. This is sort of a side note, but I just want to add it to, I think Sandy's perfect, you know, examples there, but this one works really well for me. Do you know what, have you heard of Heart Math, like the Heart Math Institute? So it's really cool. They just study like heart coherence and things like that. And so they have this thing. I wish I had, it's actually next to my bed. And it's called an inner balance trainer. And so it has an app on your phone and you clip it to your ear and it basically shows you when you're in heart coherence. So it's almost like an EEG where you can see like, okay, like if I'm taking deep breaths, if I'm thinking positive thoughts, like my heart is in coherence. When I get distracted or when I like get mad about something, oh, wow, like it really drops out. And so I sit with that for like 7 minutes every night before I go to bed, because I'm like, I want to be in like that place before I go to sleep.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
And it's a little like high performer-y because you can track it and see it. So you get like a little hit off that too. You're like, I achieved my goal, done. So I feel like it serves both pieces of my brain. Like I feel very accomplished that I did it, but also it like really puts you in the right state. It's super cool. So I'll put a link for it below if anyone's curious, but it's a really cool thing.
That's so cool. I love that so much. And your sleep is the most valuable place for your body to get a lot of rest. So that, like, honestly, for us entrepreneurs, that needs to be more prioritized than anything is your sleep, because you solve the most problems while you're sleeping, actually. And if you take your problems with you, then you might have some bad nightmares. You might, like, there are things that will come up from your unconscious mind and it'll just keep moving around in your head. And you might wake up abruptly at 3 a.m. and be like, and that was me. That was my past life, where I would just wake up at 3 a.m. and be like, oh my God, I forgot to do this. Like, I need to do this. Like, I would pull out my pen and paper and I would just like write everything down, and I would feel super anxious and I would lose my sleep. And then it keeps going for the following day. And so if you just take the 7 minutes to create that mind and heart coherence, so your body actually gets into that parasympathetic state where it's like calm, and you go to bed, oh my gosh, like you're going to sleep good. You're going to wake up with new ideas. You're going to have some sexy dreams, and you know, it's going to be
What's
good.
I think it's a Thomas Edison quote. It's in the 5 Minute Journal, but it's basically like never go to sleep without a request to your subconscious.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? I love that. So good. Okay, so I feel like we definitely covered like before after practices, but tell us like exactly how you like do this in your business almost. Like how do you bring the feminine energy to like to your day, to a task? Like how would you bring it to like this live stream or like a client call or something like that?
Yeah, I love that. I love your questions. So the feminine energy is what I want to ground in. That is my desire, right?
Yeah.
So for some of you, like it might look different, but for me, that's my desire. And so before I kind of get to that, I just want to talk a little bit about the feminine and the masculine energy.
Yes.
So at a very cellular energetic level, we all have feminine and masculine energy, whether you are a man or whether you are a woman. And your feminine energy is a part of you that is nurturing, that is wise, that is creative. That's why you give birth, right? Like you give birth to ideas, just like you give birth to babies. Your feminine energy is your sensualness, like your ability to just like move more slowly and flow. And your feminine energy, like think about how you feel at nighttime when you're by the moon. You know, like it's a very sacred, nurturing type of feeling. Whereas your masculine energy, it's ruled by the sun, and that's on your right side of the body. Your feminine's on the left side, but your masculine energy is so much about like doing and going and you know, being efficient, being logical, being strategic. That's all your masculine energy. So for me, having that knowledge and knowing that, I know that I want to ground my energy in the feminine, in the parasympathetic states. Like I want to ground my energy in what feels relaxed. Like I want to be relaxed while I'm on my client session. I want to be relaxed like while I'm on this call, right? And so I set that intention to begin with. And because I set that intention, the way that my schedule kind of looks is in the morning time, I don't start working until 11 a.m. So I give myself a ton of space. Whereas when I think about when I first started my business, I would plan calls at 8 or 9 a.m. in the morning. And I would like jolt myself awake because I don't wake up to any alarms. And I'd be like, oh my God, I have my call in 2 minutes. And then I would rush to get to the and like, I'm like, my hair's all messy. And I'm just like tying my hair up in a bun. And then I realized, wait, this isn't working for me. I need more time. I need to honor my energy. So I expanded my container in the morning time to be until 11 a.m. So my assistant knows, and anyone that's on my team knows, I'm not going to be available to answer questions or as active before 11 a.m. And then I anchor into some practices, which I don't feel like sharing is going to be helpful because it's going to look different for everybody. And then what I do is I enter into the container where I'm doing face fronting meetings. And then before I do that, I'll do some breathing practices. I'll do alternate nostril breathing, and then I'll do it after too. So before and after. So your breath is life force. And when you take an inhale, like you literally feel so good because you're taking in that life force energy. And as you're doing that, you're cleansing the body energetically. Then I take that and I bring it on to the next person. Now, the previous person's energy is cleansed from my field and also cleansed from my next client's field. And I can enter into that container from a more grounded and present state. And I rely on that grounded and present state to give me answers. So oftentimes when you're working with one-to-one clients, you feel like all your answers are only in your mind, and that's where you're stuck, right? So if you think that all your answers are only in your mind, and you're going to spin around in a circle, like, oh my God, how do I solve this problem? How do I solve this problem? Your answers are also in your intuition and in a higher level of your mind that's called the superconscious mind. So this is what, Albert Einstein talks about when he says, a problem cannot be solved at the same level that it was created. In order to solve a problem, like you have to get outside of the mind. So that's a part of the mind that we all have access to. It's the same part of the mind that, Shakespeare is able to like write this beautiful poetry that we literally still talk about today, like hundreds of years later. We all have access to that. And so I rely on that on my calls with my one-to-one clients. And it's powerful because I feel like I'm stepping out of the way and I'm using my ego to say the words and do the thing, but I'm aligning with that higher sense of self that's actually giving me very clear direction, and I can see things so clearly. And so that's how I integrate it into my business. And I think that in terms of your team, I know that for me, my intention is to be in a very grounded feminine state. And so the teams that I hire, like, they're going to be more in their masculine energy, because like that's what I need in order to feel a little bit more balance for where I'm at. And I think as you evolve, things will begin to change. So for me, my schedule has been more bi-weekly now. So in the 1 week, I'll be in my masculine and I'll be super productive and I'll have tons of meetings. And then my off week, I'll do more things that are more centered around play and fun. And like if I have a call with you, or if I just feel like I want to be on podcast episodes, I can book it on my off week, because it's more of my desire and what my energy wants versus like what my ego is trying to be like, no, you got to work more and work hard. But it took some time to get there.
Totally. It's so funny that you said the thing about like tapping in, because I feel like that's for me like one of the areas I bring it into most. Like so many people this year, especially, which is funny, have been asking me like, will you do some training on coaching and how you coach, or will you do like a coaching certification or something like that? And I've like sat with it a bunch of different times and I'm like, I don't know what I do. Like I have no idea. I literally just like, I think exactly what you said. I just feel like I step out of the way is effectively pretty much the whole thing. So it's like, I mean, I like, it would be hard for me to conceptualize and teach like, oh, here's how I coach. I'm like, I don't know. I just get out of my own way. But I think that is where the feminine and peace comes in. The only reason I'm able to is because I come at peace, because I prioritize my own peace, because like I am not getting on that call unless I am in a good space, like, and I'm going to make sure of that. I mean, most of the time. I'm not saying you never have like a crazy moment where you like wake up late or where like your dog does something stupid and you're like running to a call, but in general, that is like my highest value is like, I want to come, like, I don't know how else to say, but I want to come right to calls so that I can get out of the way. But if you're like, you know, thinking about something else or stressed about things, or like very like, oh, right after I get off this call, I have to do these 52 things. It's so hard for you to do that, right?
Yeah. And I have to say, just to speak to you, for me, when I'm hiring anyone, whether it's for my team or whether it's for like a mentor, I'm super specific about who I hire. And what I'm looking at is not not the results that you generated for other people, as much as your energy and the way that you're showing up. And like, that's why I always ask, like, you know, how many clients are you working with? Just so I have an understanding of how you handle it, because I've been on the opposite end with a coach that just like tried to fit way too much in her schedule. And I got the what's it called? The other end
of that stick. Yeah.
So I was gonna say, I got the short end on the stick, and I can feel that. And what I love so much about you is that you have this very beautiful way of grounding into your feminine, because you listen and you like really see people and you really hear them. And that's so much of your feminine energy. But then like your masculine comes in when it's like, okay, I see exactly what the problem is. Like this is what you're doing. Like this is, and that's how you get people such great results. So I hope that like this conversation and this exchange empowers people to be in their feminine more, because the way that you solve problems or come to decisions, it's just so much easier. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be any effort involved, but there's just a little bit of ease. Like it just feels like a breath of fresh air.
Yes, that's such a good way to put it. And I think that applies to even like, you know, the difference between like, I'm just going to like say like an Instagram story or something, like bringing that, like, I'm just like here to like you were saying earlier, like nurture and give and like whatever. So easy to go on stories when you're like, what am I supposed to say? How am I supposed to say it? What is the 52 steps that I'm supposed to take or whatever? It's so much harder. It doesn't mean that you don't know your message or aren't clear or whatever. It's just like a different way of like letting it come through, right?
Yeah, and it's even just like for this live, we talked last week about the live, and we talked a little bit on before too about what we were going to talk about, and there was like a title for it. but I have not spent zero time sitting down and thinking about what I'm going to say or what I'm going to do. I've been very productive. I've been traveling. And like, I just know that if I can set my intention to serve people and really speak from my heart, that the right messages are going to come through, the right people are going to show up, the right people are going to hear the message, and it's going to land with them in a way where they're like, okay, like, I get it, you know? But if I was getting in my own way and I wrote down a note card and I said, okay, so Lacey's probably going to ask me a question, and then I'm going to say this, I'm going to do that. Let me make sure that it's a linear structure. So step 1 is this, step 2 is that, step 3 is this. Like, this is how you run your feminine business. What's going to happen is I'm going to get on the live, and then I'm going to forget about what it was that I was about to say. And then I'm going to get in the way of the person on the other side that actually needs to hear this message. But it starts with my embodiment of it. Because if I'm not embodying it, then it's also not going to be received as well, right? Like people can read energy, and people are smart. Like, this is a thing that I don't love so much about this coaching industry, and just like the industry in general, is sometimes these Instagram posts treat people like they're dumb. Like, people are smart. They can read into your energy. It doesn't matter how many followers you have or how many likes you have. People can read through that. And I think it's so important that as leaders and visionaries and guides and healers, that we actually spend the time embodying the thing that we're actually teaching.
I mean, I could just hit end right now, because that's like so true and it's so good. And I think, like, again, like, that's why I was so excited for this conversation, because you're someone that I see that's like doing this on the back end, not just talking about it on the front end, which is so important. Because I think a lot of people talk about feminine energy, but have a very hard time like sitting in that in their business. And I really see you sit in that constantly in your business and make that your highest priority. And then that's why it's easy to get on here and talk about that, because you're like, I'm literally doing it all day. Like, and for me, that's kind of like mindset, strategy, and execution. Like, that's, I'm living, sleeping, breathing that all day. That's how I think about things. That's how I whatever. And so to get on and like do something on it is like, well, of course, like, that's the easiest thing in the whole world. So I think that's so true. Claire says, Sandy, do you do moon rituals?
Yeah. So around the new moon and the full moon, I keep it super simple. So if you don't know anything about moon rituals, you know, as females in general, so much of our nature is ruled by the moon. Like, notice the full moon, notice your period, like, notice where it kind of lands, and just notice energetically how you're feeling. The new moon is about calling in the things, because the new moon is empty. So if you look at it anywhere, like if you Google the phases of the new moon is empty. So when something's empty, it needs to be filled, right? So every time when it's around the new moon, and I don't strictly follow it. It's just if it shows up and my awareness goes to it, then I'm like, okay, I got to set an intention. And what I'll do is I'll just go outside and I'll be present in nature, and I'll do some breathing practices to purify my body first. And then I'll set in the intention of what it is that I want to call in, because you are the manifestation, you are the brilliance. And when you can tap into that space more, you become the magnet. So I spend my time cultivating some of those intentions. And then around the full moon, when the moon is full, you're ready to release. So you might feel like, you know, my sister is a nurse and she works in one of the busiest hospitals in Boston. And she says that around the full moon, people are just crazy. Like, they just lose it, right? They lose it. And my dog trainer who trains my dog, he says that around the full moon, the dogs are like, oh, like they're howling, like they're making tons of noise. They lose it, right? And the reason why is because around the full moon, our energy becomes so like filled up and expansive. There's so much that's just like ready to be released. And if you don't have the instruments, the techniques, the tools, and the mindset to help you lead through it, then it feels insane. Like, how many of you feel like the last full moon, you were like losing it, right? Or you maybe have had like a lot of pressure around your head, or you might have had something crazy, like just come out from out of nowhere, right?
I think you notice it with clients too. Like, I'll have a week where I'm like, oh, everybody is like releasing some shit this week. And then I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? And that, like, it's so interesting.
Yes. Yeah. And so knowing nature it's so important that we kind of follow the rhythm of nature. Just like nature has different seasons, just like the moon has different phases, you have a phase where you're like, I'm open, I'm abundant, like I'm ready to receive, I'm calling in all the things. And then you also have phases where you're like, oh my God, this shit is heavy. Like I just need to release this. And you know, that's what we do. So if your period is synced around the full moon, it's powerful because you know, our blood, like as women, it's so powerful and it's so sacred. And I think over time we've come to lose that sense. Like your DNA of all your ancestors, it's in your blood. And so every time you let go of that, like I like to use a moon cup, like every time you let go of that, especially around the full moon, like it just feels like this sense of release that you're just letting out, like just letting it go. So I know I went a little bit deeper than,
no, that's amazing.
than that, but I also know that all the women on here are ready to receive it too.
Belinda says the full moon is no joke. I used to work in public service. Totally. No joke. Okay. So let's kind of wrap up. I'd love for you to give us like, what do you feel like are the, you know, kind of most important like first steps? Like if someone's listening to this and they're like, oh, like I'm actually like, I'm hearing you on this. Like I've been operating mostly in my masculine. I really want to like start taking some of this in. Like, what do you feel like are some of those first pieces? And then I want to make sure we just kind of end with you telling them a little bit more about Prosperous as well.
Sure. Yeah. So the masculine way is to get really logical and in your head and like go down and grab a notebook and grab a pen and just write down all the things that you're going to be doing. The feminine way is to just keep it simple. It's the simple things that are the most powerful. I have sat in rooms with people that, you know, make multi-million dollars in their business. And at that point in their life, all they want is simple. They have less things, they have more quality, they have just less friends, like less distractions. And so if you can remember right now to simplify it, then it's going to make this transition a lot easier. So what I would share is think about one thing that you really love to do. And when you do this one thing, you literally lose all sense of self. You lose track of time, you lose track of all of that. Do it in the beginning of your day. So some of you are going to be like, some of you are going to be like, what? Because what happens is we wait until the end, until we do the things that, like for us, we always wait until we're done. Like I got to work hard first and then I get the carrot, right? And then I get the treat or the dessert. But no, like do that thing that you love first. So do you like to sing? Do you like to dance? Do you like to paint? Do you like to just go for a walk outside? Do the thing that you love first and give it your one pointed attention, and do that for the next 7 days and just experiment with it. And then go back on this live and write down, like, what did you learn from your experiment, from doing it for 7 days in a row, focusing on the thing that you love first, and do that for just like 20 minutes. And that's all you need.
Tell us what your thing is going to be too, because I think that's good for other people to hear it. Like, what's your thing you love? Like, just tell us, like, you know, if it's like Sandy said, like journaling or taking a walk or dancing or singing or reading or whatever, like, what's your thing? Like, tell us that. I think that's super helpful to see other people's too.
Yeah. You know, sometimes when you, like a song comes on the radio and you haven't heard it in a really long time, and it's like one of your favorite songs from when you were like 15 years old. I was out at a restaurant the other day, and this song, Celine by Celine, 'cause I'm dreaming of you tonight. So that song came on, and my friend and I were like, oh, we just started like singing and losing ourselves in it, right? Like think about that song and then just dance to it and lose yourself in it, and you'll be in your feminine.
So good. 2 questions for you here. Clara says, can you recommend where we can learn more about the moon and cycles?
I don't have any recommendations that come up for me right away, because so much of what I've learned about it has just been through experience. So I would just recommend going onto Google and looking at like the moon and cycle, but then tying it into spirituality as well, or tying it into productivity, and just seeing what books might come up for you.
I'm pretty sure Kate Northrup has a book on moon cycles and productivity, Claire. I forget what it's called. I think it's literally called Do Less, but I could be making that up.
Yeah. And there is this, I think it's called The Red Tent. I think it's called The Red Tent.
Yeah. Yes.
I think it's called The Red Tent. That's a book actually. Yeah. I never got to read it, but I think that's a book that talks about the moon cycles and also your feminine nature as well. Yeah.
Sherry says, do you think this content is equally applicable for men and women? Not sure if you work with men clients, or do you see stronger need for women to lean into feminine energy in business?
I have worked with men client. Yes. Yeah. I don't right now, but I have worked with them. And yes, I see that a lot. So so how we are in our masculine, the men are like over in their masculine. So they don't tap into their feelings. They think that if they cry that they're weak. And so whatever it's like for us, the pressure is even more on the men. And that's why it's so important for us as women that we step into this state so we can help to relieve some of the heavy burdens that are on our men. And I notice that as I start doing more of this work, my fiance is also tapping more into his feminine and being more present or honest when he's going through something and feeling like he doesn't have to keep it to himself and feeling like he can cry if he wants to cry. And so I highly recommend you first do your work.
I'm laughing because Tristan, who is a man, said that Mariah Carey's Heartbreaker gets him into his feminine energy every time. And now I can't stop playing that song. So good. I think that's so true though. I love how you're saying that too, which is like the when we hold space for that, like they step into that more too. And I think like that I see, which is like a whole other conversation we won't get into today, but like a lot of like really strong women in business are like disappointed by their partners a lot, I think, because we bring like this super masculine energy and then they're having trouble kind of like holding their masculine, or vice versa. And it's like that blend is so important.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
So good. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Oh, Belinda said she's going to be playing the piano. Oh, I love that. That's so good. Sandy plays a flute.
Yes, I do.
Okay, amazing. You are exceptional. I loved this conversation. Tell people about Prosperous. Tell them where they can find you.
Yes. So we're actually enrolling for Prosperous right now. It's called Prosperous School of Self-Realization. And it is a 90-day leadership container for females. And what I really, the intention that I set for that is that every person that finishes the 90 days walks away and has this like visceral experience of, oh my goodness, I can be wildly successful and make all of my dreams come true and be in relationships and all of that. And I can still realize who I am. I can still realize that nature of divinity that is within you. You can realize your highest expression. You can have peace. You can have joy. You can have fulfillment. And you can like have sex, like all the things that you love, you get to merge it into one. And that's what makes you prosperous. So it's a very dedicated, energetic container that I'm going to help guide people through, especially towards the end of this year, as more people are slipping to a state of fear and scarcity with the elections coming up. It's such a powerful container to be in, to finally shift into that state and feel it viscerally, so that nothing, like not even the world, can take that feeling away from you. And then you anchor into that, and your business as a result thrives because of it. And you just like get incredible results as a result of you getting more sleep and prioritizing your energy.
It's so true. And like, I think like just helpful to say like, and that's what makes it hard to step into, because you're like feeling that tension of like, well, I want that, but I really want to hit this goal first, or, but I really want to hit this thing. And so hopefully this kind of live sort of demonstrated like same, like that is the path, right? It's not like the antithesis of the path. It is the path. So I think that that's amazing. Also, you have a podcast.
Yes, I have a podcast called Prosperous. So I talk a lot about this and dive deeper into the podcast. I'm actually introducing a new monthly series with my fiance called Being Human. So we're going to talk, like, the podcast is very grounded. It's a kind of podcast that you want to listen to when you want to soothe your body and just relax. And then the Being Human aspect just shows you like all the things that go on behind the scenes for people that think that, because I show up grounded or whatever, that like I'm that way all the time. I go through my own things as well. And I think it's so important for people to see.
So good. Amazing. Okay. So, where can they find you?
You can find me at sandybo.com. We're going through a website reconstruction right now, but you'll find whatever information you need on there. And then if you want to enroll into Prosperous, I'll drop the link in the sections. We're going to start in the 22nd, the welcome call on the 22nd.
So good. Thank you so much for being here. This was beautiful. I think this is such an important conversation. I'm so grateful to you for having it so consistently and for being such an embodiment of it, really.
Thank you so much, Lacey.
You're so welcome.
Thank you so much. Bye,
All right.
everyone.
Bye, guys.